So we've been talking about comebacks. If you haven't been here the last couple weeks, quick recap, here goes. Week 1, we talked about that comebacks are possible because Jesus came back from the grave. He died, defeated sin and death, rose from the dead, and we have the ability to come back from everything because we are no longer bound by sin. Then we talked about in week 2, which was last week, we talked about, we looked at the life of Matthew and that, okay, why is my comeback possible? Yes, Jesus did this, but he's also invited me to come follow him. He has invited me to change my life. He's invited me to walk a different path than I have been walking. And so we're going to continue on this week, but we're going to kind of look at the question of, everybody has this option. We've all had this invitation from Jesus, right? We have John 3:16, for God so loved the world, gave his only begotten Son. Whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. So if I have this option given to me, if I have this invitation, standing like invitation, right? Why do people not act on it? If everyone on the earth has it, why do we just leave it out there? Why don't we accept it? Right? My kids went with us. We went to Mike Maddox's house with this small group one time, and Mike was just being nice. And he's like, hey, boys, come over and swim anytime. And Grace and Miles goes, when? Give me a standing invite. I'm taking you up on it right now. So we went back later. But right, you have a standing invitation. It's not just like, I'm just being nice. Like, it's there for us. Why don't we accept it? And the big idea we're going to kind of grasp and work around this evening is this, all right? That nothing will change in my life until I realize that everything needs to change because what I've been doing hasn't been working. All right? That is why we don't accept that invitation, because we have this thing in our mind that says, I'm good. I mean, if things get bad, I will, but I'm all right. Life's going the way I want it now. Things aren't bad. Things may be better, but they're not horrible. I don't really need that. And so we have this, I'm not going to accept it, because I don't think I need it. And it says, until I realize how bad things are, and that things are not working, I'm never going to accept that invitation. So we're going to look at what does that mean? What does that look like? We're in Luke chapter 15 now. If you have a Bible, go ahead and turn there. If you want a Bible, we have some in the back. Throw up your hand. We'll grab you one and bring it to you. But we're Luke 15, and we're going to be looking at a story that Jesus told. It's a parable, so it's kind of a made-up story that he's using to illustrate a bigger point. All right, and we're going to look at 2 main characters in this story. The first one is the guy who's known as the Father, right? He is the one who represents God in this story. And then he has sons. We don't know their names, but we are the ones who kind of identify with the sons. Like, we need to see this story for what it is. A lot of times we want to look at ourselves as like the hero of the story, but in this, we're the son. We're the son that ran away. And so we're going to walk through this story and look at, okay, what's going on here? What does this tell us about getting to a point where we accept this invitation in order for us to have this comeback in our lives? Whether that's, hey, I have never given my life to Jesus and I need to start there, or, man, I've started the school year kind of rough. I've gotten into some stuff that I shouldn't. I'm headed in a direction with things in my life that I don't necessarily think is the best choice. I'm kind of just starting to realize that. How do I come back from that? And so we're going to look at that through this story this evening. So first, we get some background on this father and son. So verse 11 of chapter 15 says, and he said there was a man who had 2 sons. That's the background we get. Not a lot. But we know this from the story as we kind of can look at a lot of it and just say, okay, this guy had a pretty good life that he had built, right? He's got servants, he's got cattle, he's got animals, he's got a house, he's got a lot of stuff going on. A lot of good things are going on in his life. He seems to have the respect of people, things are good. And he has created this life, right? He has created this perfect life for him and his sons. Again, this is a made-up story, and you said there's no perfect life, right? But Jesus is telling a story, and so he has this perfect situation that this guy has. And so we have this great situation that this father has created for his sons, right? It's a relationship built around love. There's the respect, right? Where that if the sons live within the design of the father, it's going to be a really good life. Things are going to go well. They're showered with gifts and privileges of being his children. There's perks to this. They had a really good life. But we're going to see kind of what happens from here. But for us, right, we have to grasp that, okay, looking at my situation, I have to understand what God created me for, right? God has created this perfect life for me to have in him. Doesn't mean that things are always going to be easy, but it's the perfect thing he created me for, to live out the purpose that I have, and it will satisfy me if I live within what he has called me to. And so we have to have that in mind as we start. And as we read through this story, we're going to kind of just identify where we're at with these sons. So We read verse 11. That was fantastic. Let's read it again, just in case. And he said, there was a man who had 2 sons. That's it. Verse 12, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me. And he divided his property between them, right? The way this sounds like, hey, Dad, can I have this? And Dad said, yeah, here. There you go. There's so much more emotion in this than that. Because what is going on here is he's saying, Dad, I want my inheritance. I don't know if you are familiar with inheritances, but this is how it works. 99.999% of the time, that is distributed after the parent dies. After the parent is gone, then the will or trust is read, and they distribute whatever assets and money to who the father or the mother had wished it to go to. But this son walks up to his father. There's nothing here that says father is about to die. Nothing that says he has a terminal illness. Nothing that we know of that's bad. He walks up to what we can assume is his perfectly healthy father and says, I want the money that I get when you die. Right? Probably not the best way to interact with your parent, right? It's insulting. It's a betrayal of the life that they had built. He says, hey, I want this money. And he asks for it. But what's interesting here is even though there's this insult, what the father does is he gives it to him. Right? It says, and he divided his property between them. His son comes, insults him, and says, I want what I will get when you die. He says, all right, here you go. All right, that's a reminder for us, right? God is still good to us even when we insult. God still gives us good gifts and good things in life even when we've betrayed and insulted him. And so the son has asked for this. And what we need to see is, so we have this, hey, we got this perfect situation, but our sin is an offense and insult to the life that he generously gives. Right? So I have to understand, okay, this is what I was made for. My sin is an issue here. It insults and betrays God, just like this son did. We insult and betray God with our sin. We're basically saying, we want the gifts you give, not you. We want the good things of God, but not you. God, I want everything you can give me, but I don't want you. My dad, when he was not retired and living in Florida in a golf cart community like he is now, he designed oil refineries all over the world for a job. He's a chemical engineer, so he'd go design them. I would try to explain it to you. I don't even know what it did. I just know that there's a computer with a lot of pipe-looking things on it. Oh, that looks awesome. All right? But he would be on business trips everywhere. He'd go Saudi Arabia, the Philippines, Russia, Japan. Literally all over the world. And he'd be gone for about a week at a time, and he'd come back. And we would kind of get in this routine that we knew, he would bring us just these knickknacks or just trinkets from wherever he was at. And so he would get home, and we'd say hi, tell us about his trip, and then he'd give us these gifts. Well, there's one time, this is not something I'm proud of. I was young. I was under 4th or 5th grade. I know that, right? And my dad gets home from this week-long trip, and he comes in the door. It's like a scene of a movie. My older brother, Dad! He's got his bag. He picks him up, and I walk in the room. I don't know what came over me, but I said, what'd you bring us? Right? Not even, hello, Dad, welcome home, glad to see you. Just, what did you bring me? All right? And then I got a scolding from my parents about how that's rude and not kind, right? But it's this idea of I don't care about you, the person who puts a roof over my head and gives me everything I want. I just want the gifts you give me. It's insulting. But that's what we do to God, all right? God is generous to us even in that betrayal. But what we're really doing is saying, I know what's best for my life. I want to take everything that you've given me in my life, my gifts, my talents, my abilities, whatever things that you have placed in my life. I want to take that and forget about you, but build the life that I want for myself. And I am fine with that. We don't see the insult and the betrayal until we step back and see it from the outside. But it is. All right? And so this happens, the father gives it, and then we see what happens from there. Verse 13. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country, and there he squandered his property in reckless living. All right? Think about that. Not many days. It means he took his inheritance from his dad and then slept in his house for a few days still, and then took off. And he moved to a city, and it says, squandered his property in reckless living. That's a nice, clean way of saying he partied like there was no tomorrow, and he blew it all. he like indulged in everything he could. He enjoyed that weekend, whatever it was, to the absolute fullest. And then it was gone. And it was over. The money was gone. Everything that his father had given him was gone. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in the country, and he began to be in need. There was never a need when he was back with his father. All right? But he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into the fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs are, and no one gave him anything. There's a massive change that happens here. All right? The son takes his gift, he squanders them, he just blows it out. I mean, he indulges every single thing, but he finds out what Solomon tells us in the book of like Ecclesiastes, a guy who's the wisest man who ever lived, who basically says, hey, I have explored everything you could possibly look to for like enjoyment and pleasure and whatnot. I've explored it all. And it's all worthless, pointless, vanity, foolishness. It means nothing. The only thing that matters is God. So this guy, knows, he's the wisest man ever lived, and he tells us exactly what this guy figured out. I blew it all, it was gone, and it meant nothing. It didn't do anything, and now I'm in a pig pen, in a field, starving, hoping I can eat some of what the pigs have. I don't know if you've ever been to Suisun Park. That's the closest I get to pigs, all right? Old Maurice, the big old pot-belly pig. I think he's died since then. But just big, fat pig. It's a pig, not a person, okay? He was delicious, I'm sure, right? But he's this big, probably 200-300-pound pig that just lays there in his own filth. And you see the food they put out for him. How hungry would you have to be to say, maybe? Not even oh, I want that. This guy's longing and hungering for this. That's how low he's fallen. That's how much his life has been messed up. And he shows us, right, that we have, the Father has given us this good, perfect life. We've insulted and betrayed with our sin, and then past that, right, God's gifts used outside of his plan are wasted, right? So this son wastes it all. There's nothing left. This money that sustained his family, that this household was run on, is gone. And he's knee-deep in pig poo, feeding pigs, starving to death. And you say, what went wrong? Where did it go? What happened? When I take the good gifts of God and use them for my purposes, I waste them. Now we think oh yeah, this guy's obviously doing that. But you have gifts and talents that God has given you. Whether you are good at sports, you can sing, you're good at school, and by school I mean anything, mathematics or science or whatever. You may be intelligent, you may have a way with people, and you may be able to influence people, and people follow you. Whatever God has given you that you do not use his way is wasted. Because you're using it to build your kingdom, which is just like this guy, hey, I'm going to blow it out for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Maybe he had a ton of money. It was a 2-month bender, right? And he enjoyed life to the absolute extreme. But here is the thing. There's a difference between enjoyment and satisfaction. Because we can look at a lot of the stuff that God says not to spend your time on, and you'd be like, man, I would enjoy that, right? If we're just honest, we're that would be enjoyable. But enjoyment is temporary. You ever had a hot dog? It's enjoyable. And then you want another one. And then 4 more. It is. Don't you say it's not. Fine. A steak. Okay, there we go. Steak. Sorry, we got the pinky out crew here tonight. Okay. The steak's good. And maybe, man, for an hour I enjoyed that. I was full. You're enjoying the steak. I'm sorry. You don't eat it like a hot dog, right? But the next night for dinner, when a hot dog's put in front of you, I really like some more steak. All right? And enjoyment is fleeting. It's a temporary thing. Satisfaction, though, that's different. Jesus says that he will satisfy us. I think it's important that we know that he doesn't say, you will enjoy me. Right? He says, but you will be satisfied in me. Satisfaction is I have gotten all that I want, all that I need, and I don't want more. I've gotten the perfect amount that will sustain me, that will carry me through. It's exactly what I need. I'm satisfied. When I eat a donut hole, I'm not satisfied. I enjoy it, but I'm not satisfied. Be careful of living your life for enjoyment in the moment versus the satisfaction that can only be found in God. Because that's what happens here is this guy comes to this point, and he is, the lowest of the lows, right? But everything changes at this point. Verse 17, he says this. He says, but when he came to himself, all right, this is where everything turns. This is where he says, hey, that invitation sounds pretty good. That invitation from God to come change my life and to make things different, that sounds really good right now. He came to himself and he said, how many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? He takes a step back and he says, what have I made of my life? I got all the money I wanted from my father. I got the servants. I got whatever I needed. And I went out and made the life that I wanted. And what do I have to show for it? I'm in a pig pen hoping I can steal food from Maurice. Right? That's the point where he says, you know what? What we started with, nothing's going to change in my life until I realize everything needs to change because what I've been doing hasn't been working. This is where I realize it hasn't been working. I wanted to create for myself a life that I would love and enjoy, and I enjoyed it for a bit, but it's gone, and I can't get it back, and I'm not satisfied. I messed it up. When he came to himself, when he comes to his senses, and he realized the state that he was in, he realized, I'm at rock bottom. I think it's important for us to know, though, that this guy was at rock bottom before he realized it. We have this picture of rock bottom as you're walking through downtown St. Louis. It's dirty street, guy's laid over in the gutter, a homeless-looking guy covered in his own vomit, and he's OD'd, and just a wreck of a life. And we think that's rock bottom. That's an easy thing to say, it's rock bottom. But you can walk through the business district in downtown St. Louis, and a guy with a brand new Mercedes and a $6,000 suit is just as much at rock bottom as that guy in the gutter. The only difference is you can see the result in the homeless guy. But the guy with the $6,000 suit, he may be making his life about himself, and he's run from the Father just like the Son has. I think we would agree that when the son is out and he's got the money, he's just living it up, he had run from and he had betrayed the Father and he wasn't living the life that he was created for. He was just as much at rock bottom. Being at rock bottom is not where we turn around. Realizing we're at rock bottom is what changes it. When he realized he was at rock bottom was when he's standing in the pig pen. When he realized the life that he had created for himself ever since he told his father, I want the gifts but not you. It took him that long to realize, okay, this is what I've made of my life. And then he decides to go back home. All right, he says, hey, my father's servants have bread. I'm trying to steal garbage from the pig. He has what's better for me. I'm going to go back. Why? Because what I'm doing isn't working. And everything needs to change. All right? Number 4, as we wrap up. So we have God has created this perfect scenario and life for us to live. Our sin is an insult and betrayal to him. Then we waste everything he's given us. And then number 4, though, is the comeback begins when I acknowledge how unfit I am to lead my own life. And that's what this guy's done. He says, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? I had it all. I had it perfectly. And I threw it away. In the words of the great philosopher Andy Bernard, I wish there was a way you could know you're in the good old days before they're gone, right? And as people that have been loved by God, we need to grasp it and know that hey, even if there's something that I think that I would enjoy that I don't have, the life God has created me for, that's the good old days that I will not realize how great it was until I've walked away from it, so I'm not going to do it. But the comeback starts when I acknowledge how unfit I am to lead my own life. When I come to the end of myself. See, we have this but when he came to himself, but I think what we really need to grasp is when I come to the end of myself. When I come to the end of what I think I can do, when I've done everything that I think I can do and I realize it's not enough, it doesn't satisfy, it doesn't make my life what I want it to be, what I think it should be, and I'm left wanting more, that's when I say, everything needs to change. Jesus, that invitation you've been holding out there the entire time I've been spitting in your face and running from you, I want that. And I am taking you up on that. And everything needs to change. And I realize what I was made for and how I'm settling for less than that. That's when I return home to the waiting invitation of the Father. And this story ends, it goes on, and there's a whole lot more we could talk about, but it ends with him basically saying, all right, this is my plan. I'm going to go and basically beg and grovel my Father to take me back. Just, hey, make me a servant. That's fine. I will clean your pig pens as long as I don't have to steal food from the pigs. I'll eat bread, right? He's just this is as long as I can get in the door there. And he's rehearsing this. He walks home, and his dad sees him, and he comes running out. And the son's probably thinking, oh, he's about to smoke me with an uppercut or something here or something. He's just ticked, right? And he's about to go into his speech, and the father just wraps him up and gives him a hug. And he's about to, Dad, I'll be a servant in your house. And his dad's like, shut up. You're my son. Bring me the finest robe. Bring me the ring, which this talks about a ring. You're like, what? Is he Frodo? What's going on here, right? No, it's, hey, this signifies his sonship. He is my son. He has run, and I'm welcoming him back. I have paid the debt for the sin and the insult and the betrayal that he did to me, and I'm welcoming him back as a son to give him the good gifts and to give him the life that he was created for. That's a good deal. But the comeback starts when I realize the invitation's always been there. And I've come to the end of myself and I've said, hey, what I've been doing isn't working and things need to change. Jesus, I'm going to live my life your way. So what I've been running for since day one of school this week, if it's not been of you, Jesus, help me realize I'm at rock bottom before I'm in the pig pen. Help me realize I've been running after empty things that I may enjoy but will not satisfy before I get to the point of trying to steal food from pigs. Help me see that. Help me come to the end of myself to where I look to you and I say, I will take your invitation to turn it all around and follow you and trust you and bring my life back to you. Don't settle for temporary thrills when you are meant to live in the satisfaction of the real thing.